I want to be useful or give pleasure to people around me who yet don't really know me. I want to go on living even after my death. This statement was written by an incredible girl named Anne Frank, who was a Jewish girl during the Holocaust. Today we will be discussing her life, which was cut far too short. You really should listen closely to Frank's life story because it holds a valuable life lesson for us all. No matter how small we think we are in this world, we can still have a great impact on it. We will look at her life in 3 categories today. First, we will discuss her life before hiding, then we will discuss her life in hiding, and finally we'll discuss her life after she was captured, as well as the legacy she left behind. Now that you know the topics we're going to cover, let's dive into the details. First, we will look at the life that Anne Frank lived before her family went into hiding. The first most important thing to understand is that even before Anne Frank went into hiding, she lived nothing even close to a childhood that people in the modern-day United States would consider to be normal. Anne went into hiding when she was only 13 years old, and didn't ever live a normal life because of that. According to the Current Events publication on February 27, 1998, Otto Frank, Anne Frank's father, moved to Amsterdam, the Netherlands, in September 1933 and set up a branch of his brother's home products business. His wife, Edith, went with him. Anne, then 4 years old, and sister Margot, then 7, stayed behind with their grandmother. They joined their parents a few months later. The Frank family left because of Margot getting a letter to report to a work camp. This publication goes on to say that the Frank family was later joined by another family in hiding, but we will discuss that later. Even though Anne Frank's childhood wasn't what we would consider to be normal, it was still well documented, mainly by her father. Otto Frank loved to take pictures of his daughters, Anne and her older sister Margot, while they were growing up. In the May-June 2010 publication of Humanities, Hilary E.D. Steibelman, who was a program manager at Anne Frank USA, stated that because of Otto Frank's love of photographing his girls, as a result, we are very lucky to have a collection of pictures of the girls growing up in Germany and the Netherlands. Now that we've discussed Anne Frank's life before her family went into hiding, let's move on to discussing what her life was like in hiding. As you can probably imagine, Anne Frank's life in hiding was far from glamorous. One of the biggest struggles of the families living in the annex, especially for a girl like Anne, who was described as being exuberant and restless, was the fact that everyone had to be silent during the day. Given the fact that the annex was located above a business, any noise made by the people in the annex would risk being caught and turned into the secret police. There had to be limited movement, there could only be baths on Sundays, and talking had to be whispered. In order to keep herself occupied, Anne kept a diary. She wrote in it very frequently, and it's a first-hand description of what day-to-day life was like while living in the annex. While Frank never understood why anyone would want to read about her life, she still kept a very detailed diary. In the May-June 2010 issue of Humanities, Frank was quoted saying, "It's an odd idea for someone like me to keep a diary, not only because I've never done so before, but because it seems to me that neither I, nor for that matter anyone else, will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Still, what does that matter? I want to write, but more than that, I want to bring out all kinds of things that lie buried deep in my heart." This quote shows the kind of girl that Anne Frank was. In everything she did, she was almost always thinking about how she could help the world. It is believed that someone who was helping the families in hiding turned them in, and that's why they were caught. After the families were arrested, Anne's diary was found. In the May-June 2010 publication of Humanities, Laura Wolf Scanlon was explaining that Meep Guys, a friend who brought food, clothing, books, and the awful news of the war to those in hiding in the secret annex above the Franks' office, returned to the hiding place shortly after the arrest to find it ransacked by the Dutch police. Now that we've talked about Anne's life in hiding, let's finally talk about her life after hiding and the legacy she left behind. Finally, we're going to talk about what I would consider to be one of the most important parts about Anne Frank's life. Frank died in February 1945 when she caught typhus along with her sister in the concentration camp. She died just weeks before the camp was liberated. The majority of the impact left by Anne Frank was realized after her death, and we are lucky that Anne Frank's diary ever got published at all, thanks to Meep Guys. In the May-June 2010 publication of Humanities, Meep Guys referred to Anne's original diary that she found by saying, "It's a good thing I didn't read them, because if I had read them, I would have had to burn them. Some of the information in them was dangerous." This quote from Meep goes to show how real Anne's writing was. Anne making her writing real was a very brave thing to do, because if her writings had been found by the secret police, she could have gotten in even more trouble and her life would have been even more terrible. In the book entitled Anne Frank, Frank was quoted saying, "I want to be useful or give pleasure to people around me who yet don't really know me. I want to go on living even after my death." Anne spent her life wanting to help to change the world. Now that we've discussed all time periods of Anne Frank's much too short life, let's review. Today I've told you about 3 major time periods in Anne Frank's life. First, we discussed her life before hiding, then her life in hiding, and finally we discussed her life after hiding and the legacy that she left behind. Anne Frank didn't have a normal childhood, and she didn't live a normal life, but she left an amazing legacy behind. Never even making it to age 16, Anne Frank left a legacy greater than any of us could ever dream of leaving. To show the impact she had on the world, I'll leave you with a statement. The Diary of Anne Frank has been translated into more than 60 languages and is one of the most read books in the world. I'd say that's quite a legacy to leave behind.